Hello everybody, welcome to the video. Hopefully you're all having amazing creative days. So today we're going to be talking about how to set up any wireless lavalier microphone system with any mirrorless camera system. So stick around. If that's something you want to learn, then this tutorial is for you. All right, so I've set myself up here against the white wall with LED light here that's kind of noisy. Listen to this. Can you hear the fans on that? That's pretty bad. And of course, if I hold the microphone up like this, you're gonna hear nothing but echo, echo, echo. So I gave myself a really tricky situation here with a blank white wall, which has a lot of echo. And we have a light with a fan on. And one of the advantages to using a wireless lavalier microphone system is you don't get a lot of echo. If you have a shotgun mic on your camera or you have a boom mic up above, it's gonna pick up echo all around the room. So if you're working in a room that's not sound treated, lavalier mic definitely gives you an advantage. Now, another huge advantage to using lavalier microphones or wireless lavalier microphones is that you don't have to be standing right in front of the camera or right in front of the microphone on the camera or right in front of the boomed microphone above the camera. You can pretty much wander as far as you want away from the camera within a certain limit. It's about 100 feet or so. But yeah, that's a huge advantage because you can be mobile, you can walk around, and your audio is still gonna sound fantastic. All right, so today I'm gonna teach you how to set up any type of wireless lavalier microphone with your mirrorless camera. Now, I can certainly understand if you're new to shooting with wireless mics, you might be a little bit apprehensive or wondering how to set it up and how does this all work. It might be a little bit confusing, especially if you're not really a tech savvy type of person. But in this video, I'm gonna give you the basics, the 101, the rundown. I'll teach you how to set up the mics, how to set up the menus in your cameras and get everything rolling so your audio sounds perfect. Now, the one thing you gotta understand is I'm gonna be using a Canon camera and we're gonna look at the Canon menus, but this system or this process applies to Canon, Sony, Lumix, Nikon, Fuji. They might have different names in the menus, but overall it's the same process, all right? So let's jump into it and set up these lavalier mics. Okay, so let's talk about the differences between a transmitter and a receiver and what you need here to set everything up with your camera. So obviously you need your camera, you need your transmitter, you need your receiver, and you need a pair of headphones. So if you have all that, you're good to go. All right, so let's talk about the key differences between a transmitter and receiver. So a receiver is the part that plugs into your camera and feeds the audio into your camera. Usually this one doesn't. This one has a belt clip, but it has an optional cold shoe adapter. Usually the receivers have a cold shoe adapter so you can attach it to the camera. That slides onto there so that can attach to the hot shoe of the camera. And then usually the receiver will have some sort of cable like this, male end to male end 3.5mm jack, and one end will plug into the receiver and the other end will plug into the audio port on your camera so it can feed the audio that it receives into your camera. Pretty simple, right? All right, for the transmitter, this is what goes on you and it records your audio and sends it to the receiver on the camera. So transmitters can be big and bulky like this, or they can be little tiny transmitters like this. In this case, this little transmitter has a mic jack in it and it also has a mic in it as well. So if you've seen these people like this that just clip a little mic onto their jackets and they start talking, this is transmitting to the receiver on the camera. Or in this case, with this device, what you can do is you have a lapel microphone like this and it plugs into the transmitter and then the lapel mic will plug into here and it'll record the audio. And that's what you're listening to right now. I'm actually using a Sennheiser mic system. It's tucked away in my shirt here, but this is what you've been listening to for this video. All right, so now that you know what a transmitter and receiver are all about, you know the basics, so let's start with step one in pairing the two. Now, unfortunately, I can't help you with this process because I don't know what lav system you're using. They're all different, and you're gonna have to read your instruction manual. So what I suggest you do is pull out your instruction manual, pause this video, and resume it once you figure it out. Some of them, obviously, you just turn them on and they auto pair. Some of them you have to hold down a button for a few seconds and they pair, and some of them you have to manually select the channels. So, you know, channel one, everything's good. If this one's channel 1 and this one's channel 3, obviously they're not going to communicate. So figure out how to pair your lavs and then resume the video. All right, welcome back. Let's set up the camera to record some audio from our wireless mics. So I have a little screen recorder set up here to record the back of the screen of this R7. And like I said, the menu system may be different on your camera system or your camera, but in general, the theory is still the same. So whatever you learn here, you can apply to your camera system. All right, so receiver is going in the hot shoe. We're gonna pop that in there, and then this little cable goes into the mic input on the camera. And we are good to go. Now, in terms of the transmitter, what you want to do is set up your mic wherever you're going to be talking. So we're going to set it up here on the lapel. And the one thing you got to understand is that when you set up when you calibrate the camera, I guess, to work with the mic, don't move the mic closer and further away from your mouth. Wherever you set it and you set up the camera and the audio sounds good, keep the mic the same distance from the mouth at all times, because obviously if you move the mic closer, it's going to get louder. If you move it further, it's going to get softer. So that's just something to keep in mind. Little pro tip for you there. All right, so now we're going to plug our headphones into the camera output, because we got to hear the audio that's coming out of the camera to make sure it sounds good. So let's get those in there. Okay, so now we're listening to the Comica mics plugged into the R7, and you can see that it's sounding a little bit hot, it's a little bit loud, and there's some noise. If I stop talking, you can hear a little bit of noise. And I don't know if you can hear this. I can definitely hear this in my headphones. There's a band practicing in the studio next door, and there's drums, and I can hear the drums. Can you hear the drums? All right, so this mic is picking everything up. So what you want to do is obviously drop the audio recording levels so that you can get rid of that and clean up all the sound. But first things first, let's look at the back of the screen. And here you can see a little audio indicator. And if you don't see that on your camera, there should be a display or info button on the back of your camera. You can just hit that a few times and cycle through your display modes. So right here, what you can see is that green dot there is minus 12 dB, and that's where we want to be peaking. We're going a little bit over that. We're going pushing past minus 6, and you can see that when the audio hits red like that, it clips. So those red indicators means the audio is clipped and the sound is getting distorted, and we definitely don't want that. So what we have to do is adjust the audio settings. So we're going to pop into the camera menu settings, and we're going to set that up right now. I'm going to show you what menu settings you need. All right, so here we are in the menu settings, and you want to go to sound recording. It's set to auto. And the problem here is that some mics will have an auto gain or auto level, so they'll like try and minimize the really loud sounds and bring up the soft sounds and try and auto level everything. And if the camera is set to auto, it's also going to be trying to auto gain everything and like minimizing the loud sounds and bringing up the soft sounds. So if you have two systems fighting with each other, trying to level things out, you get really awkward sounding audio, as you probably just heard. So first thing we want to do is switch from auto to manual mode. And then we want to go here to where it says recording level, and that's sort of like the gain on your camera or the volume at which you want to record. So if you bring this slider all the way down here, you'll notice that the audio is kind of disappeared, so we kind of muted ourselves here. If we bring it up a little bit, you can see we're at minus 40 dB to minus 30 dB, and that's really quiet. You're not going to hear much. Even if I talk really, really loud, I'm only pushing it to minus 20, so it's nothing going on there. And on the other end of the spectrum, if we bring the audio recording all the way to the other side, you can see this sounds really bad. And I'm just going to make a little recording here so you can hear what clipping audio sounds like. And this is what audio sounds like when it's clipping. Obviously it's distorted, it's all wonky, it doesn't sound good. Nobody wants to be recording audio like this, and more importantly, nobody wants to listen to audio like this. So we're going to pop back into the menu, and we're going to drop that record level until we peak at about minus 12 dB, and it's going to sound good. All right, so now we're going to drop the recording level, and we're just going to keep going down until we start peaking at about minus 12 dB. We're almost there. So here we go. We're just hitting about minus 12 dB, and everything sounds good. And remember, one of the tricks with recording audio is it's better to be a little quieter and then bring up the volume in post rather than being too loud and then trying to get rid of all that noise in post. So we're going to stick around here. This looks about right. We're just peaking about a little couple ticks lower. So we're here about minus 12. And if I get a little too excited and I talk a little louder, I'm not really pushing past minus 6 dB. All right, so now you're listening to audio from the R7 again, and this is at minus 12 dB. It sounds a lot cleaner than it did before. So there you go. That's how you set up your menu settings so your audio sounds good with your lavalier mics. Now there are a few other things you can do, like there's gain and there's a low cut filter, which I'm going to talk about next. All right, so let's talk about gain. Some microphones have a gain option, some of them have auto gain, some of them have no gain, and it just, sometimes gain is even called volume. So if you bring up the volume of the mic, then all your voice sounds a little bit louder, but it's a gain, but it's called volume, and it gets a little confusing sometimes, but here's the basics. Gain is basically, and this is not the technical term or definition for it, but this is what helped me understand what it is, because I'm a photographer by trade, and then I had to teach myself videography. And so for me, the way I look at gain is a combination of volume or loudness and sensitivity. So if the gain is low, the overall, I guess, loudness of the mic is going to be low. The voice is going to sound quieter, and you're not going to hear a lot of the background sound. So it's just really going to, whatever's close to the mic, you're going to hear. But if your gain, for example, is set really high, the loudness of the voice goes up, but the sensitivity of the mic also goes up. So you'll hear other things in the room. For example, that LED light there, the fan, you'll hear that spinning. You might hear traffic outside a window. You might hear a fridge running in a different room. So depending on how high your gain is and how sensitive your mic is to sounds, you'll hear different things. So that's just something to consider. If your mic does have a gain setting, you're probably dealing with a more expensive mics. The cheaper mics usually don't have that. It's just all automatic. So what you want to do is, if your mic does have gain, plug it into your camera, plug the headphones into your camera, and then adjust the gain. Listen to your voice as you're talking and adjust the gain up and down until all you hear is your voice. If the gain's too high, obviously you're going to hear other things. You might hear noise, you might pick up just like a shh sound, right? So you want to bring down the gain until all you hear is your voice. And if your voice is slightly quiet, that's okay, because you can bump up that voice in post, right? But if your gain is too high and you're picking up your voice and noise in the room, when you bump up the audio levels in post or bump up the volume in post, you're going to bump up all that other stuff you don't want to hear too. So lower your gain till all you hear is your voice, and then in your editing program, you can bump up the volume of your voice so you sound a little louder. So that's a little trick, a little more advanced. This is a kind of a beginner tutorial, but if you have gain on your mic and you want to play around with that, there you go. All right, so let's talk about the hockey stick, the low cut filter. And of course, I'm Canadian, so it looks like a hockey stick to me. And this is a low cut filter, low pass filter. And basically, when a microphone records audio, it records like high to low frequency, it records everything. So when you activate the low cut, it cuts out a part of that frequency. So let's say you're outside shooting on a windy day and you hear whoosh, it'll cut out that frequency range so you don't hear it in your audio. Or if there's like noise in the room or a shh in the room, you hit the low cut filter and it'll cut out that range of the audio frequency. So it won't completely get rid of the noise in the background, but it'll diminish it quite a bit. And then when you load your audio into your video editing program like Premiere Pro, you can run denoise or something like that, and it'll just clean up all the audio. It just makes it easier for your video editing program to clean up the noise in the background so your voice stands out. The downside to using the hockey stick is that it changes your voice a little bit, because it does cut out a certain frequency. So if you're going to use it when you need to use it. But if you're in a situation where you don't need to use it, then definitely don't use it, because your voice will sound fuller without it on. All right, so that's the low cut filter. If you're curious about the lavalier mics I'm showing in this video, I have reviews for the Sennheiser and the Comica mics on the channel. Links will be down below in the description. Now, if you're interested in this Maono mic set, Maono sent me this recently, and I have to do a review video for these mics, and that'll be linked in the description when it's ready. So if you want to see that, definitely subscribe to the channel, because that video will be coming soon. All right, so you're a pro now at setting up your lavalier mics with your camera. Now let's do a quick little recap, and here's the final tip, is that if you are switching lav systems, like here we have the Comicas, and then we have the Maonos, and we have the Sennheisers. If I plug each one into the camera, see right now the camera is set to minus 12 dB for the Comicas, but if I plugged in a different system, it would sound completely different. I would have to recalibrate. Also, if you're moving between cameras within the same system, I can tell you that the R5 and the R7 sound completely differently. The R7 is a lot hotter right out of the gate. So the settings I use for one camera don't necessarily work for the other camera, and the settings you use for one set of lavs don't necessarily work for another set of lavs. So pro tip for you is, if you're switching lav systems, switching cameras, always go and recalibrate. Make sure everything is set to minus, or to peak at about minus 12 dB to minus 6 dB, so you don't get any weird audio and you don't get any surprises when you go back into post and realize your audio is all wonky. So always double check to make sure it's peaking in the right place. And obviously, if you're gonna change the gain, plug your lav system into your camera, use your headphones to listen to it through the camera, drop your gain or increase your gain till all you hear is your voice, and then after that, pop into the camera menu settings and adjust everything to -12 dB. And then, you just gotta play with the different settings, because obviously you can adjust the volume on the mics, you can adjust the volume through the camera, and then you just have to make sure it all sounds good and you're good to go. All right, and with that being said, this video is over. Thanks for watching. Give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And that's it. You are now a master of wireless lavalier microphones. Peace out.